Okay, well, hi everyone. Welcome to our TED Talk. Just kidding, our BHBA talk, navigating the OpenSea, the business side of NFTs. We're your hosts, Jennifer Goldstein and Thomas Gaffney. I am a litigator in Michelman and Robinson's LA office. I have a background in primarily representing businesses. Also started my practice as a consumer class action attorney on the plaintiff side. So I provide a bunch of diverse perspectives to this group on the litigation side, and I'm going to be mainly covering information about litigation risk associated with NFTs. Thomas does a total opposite.
My name's Thomas Gaffney. I've been in the crypto game for a long time. Went to law school and was still obsessed with crypto. I've been in it about since 2012. I've written several papers on it. Have had some published. I've been working with clients. I'm a startup financing attorney and corporate organization. I work with Web3 companies more so, especially with the explosion of NFTs and crypto over the last 3 years. So that's what my focus is focusing on. And I'm just continuing to grow. I hope you all are prepared for a very fun and kind of casual but cool conversation. We actually, there's a Q&A section where you can click. It's at the bottom of your screen. We're open to questions throughout. We understand that a lot of people here have various ranges of expertise and understanding about the crypto space and NFTs in general. So if you have any questions at any time, do not hesitate to just pop some in the Q&A, and we can address this thing as live. We kind of vision this thing as being kind of like a fireside chat style conversation that's very educational, and it's also engaging. So we're here for you. We're here to help you learn as much as you can. Jen and I are considered experts in the space, and let's get ready to rock.
All righty. Well, now that you've seen our faces and we've passed the test, we are going to move to our handy PowerPoint. We're still going for the fireside chat vibe in our voices though. So please do look at our faces, ask us questions, whatever you need. But again, this is the PowerPoint that's going to guide us, and our contact information is at the end of the slides if you need to have some more personalized conversations about your NFT project. So just a little background, Thomas and I are also the chairs of the business law section of the Beverly Hills Bar Association. So when we were putting this presentation together, we did it with the mindset of speaking to businesses, specifically people who are interested in starting NFT projects, or for the attorney side, or they could be starting NFT projects, they could be running exchanges, whatever the case may be. And on the attorney side, maybe you're advising these clients. So we have some goodies in here for the attorneys watching as well. But it's really supposed to be, accessible to both lawyers and non-lawyers. So let's get into it.
Good put. Well put, Jen.
So our first question, what is an NFT project? What does it even look like? And Thomas is here to tell you all about that to start us off, and especially with an eye to these three examples. For those of you who have never seen NFTs, these are some examples of some.
Yeah, so let's just get started. We'll do a real quick rundown of what an NFT is, just really quickly. An NFT stands for non-fungible token. And I'm assuming most of the people that are here understand what Bitcoin is and what blockchain is. Hopefully you know what Ethereum is. And a non-fungible token is essentially just a smart contract that incorporates some form of image that's either digital, moving 3D, in some type of even audio files that is living on a blockchain that has become immutable, right? And so some people don't really understand that concept, right? Because they're like, oh, what am I, just buying a JPEG or buying just a picture where I can just download it anywhere else? Like, yeah, you probably can. But at the same time, NFTs are more than just a JPEG. They're starting to become like a sense of community, right? So you have these things like, you got Bored Ape Yacht Club, you got the Adidas originals, you've got the Spooky Boys Country, what was it? Country what?
Spooky Boys Country Club. We'll talk about that in a second.
Country Club. So these things are becoming more than just an image. I mean, once you understand it, and I hope that at the end of the talk you'll really understand it further, is that NFTs are acting now as kind of like the Soho houses of the world. They are an exclusive club of a mastermind group that your NFT, since it's on a blockchain, you can show a proof of authenticity, right? You can show that this is yours. It allows you entrance into what's called in the space utility, into this world that allows you access to things that you can't get unless you are an owner of one of these NFTs. So for perfect example, like the Spooky Boys Country Club, right? They had a really cool thing that, Jen, do you want to elaborate on this just a little bit?
Yeah. So actually, let's start from, well, the Spooky Boys Country Club is really interesting because it's an example of an NFT project that has a mission in mind. So this is their homepage on OpenSea, which is an exchange where people can go and
what's
buy and
OpenSea,
sell.
just so people know?
What?
What is OpenSea, just so people know?
Yes, so OpenSea is an exchange where people can go to buy and sell their NFTs.
Like an art gallery.
So as Thomas said, these are more than just images. If you have something like an Adidas NFT, right, which might be an access pass to a particular pair of shoes or to a particular club, that's more than just, if you went into an Adidas store and bought a pair of shoes and kept them. Similarly, Decentraland is more than just a picture of a map. It's actually a piece of land that you own in a virtual world, right?
Let me interject here real quick. Decentraland is a separate blockchain that exists, right? Where you can buy NFTs and, like Jen said, parcels of land that exist in the metaverse. So this is one metaverse that exists out there that you can be a part of. So think of like World of Warcraft, any MMO or RPG, different types of games that you can kind of integrate yourself in and have an avatar and interact with. Go, Jen.
Yeah, but the point is these are more than just pictures. So but they each have different missions, right? With Adidas, it's maybe accessing drops to merchandise. With Decentraland, it's maybe about maintaining your own land use, right? With Spooky Boys Country Club, which I sort of pulled up to walk us through the different, iterations of how these projects can evolve to a layperson. They're a community of people who are interested in attending really chic parties, owning a mansion together, all kinds of things. And so when you talk about an NFT, really you're talking about a project. You're talking about a community of people coming together to achieve a goal. So this is just how a layperson probably becomes familiar with them off the bat, is they go to OpenSea or they go to an exchange that hosts a million of these projects, right? And they say, okay, well, let me look at the Spooky Boys Country Club. And you'll see over here, they have a website, right? They have a Discord, which is essentially like a chat group. They have an Instagram, they have a Twitter. So it's a highly engaged community that uses the momentum and the interest of the community to spark the business plan. So this is Spooky Boys Country Club's website. Okay, you can enter the club if you're a club member. We're not going to do that. We're just going to kind of introduce you to the ghosts. These are the Spooky Boys. These are the NFTs that people own.
Yeah. And NFTs, honestly, a lot of these, so this project, right, is created through what's called generative art. It's a really fascinating concept where you have this thing, it's called a base character, right? Can you scroll up to the ghost real quick? So if you see the purple ghost, that outline is what's called the base character, and you'll create these different things called traits. You see the little Shrek ears and the tongue sticking out. So graphic designers make these things that they have it's created through layers. It's really cool. And you can create different traits. Like that ear is one trait. The tongue sticking out is one trait. So they'll have like 250 of these different traits, and then they'll put it in an algorithm to spit it out randomly to create some 10,000 different unique images based on the base character, which is the ghost. The traits, which is purple, has different eyes, has different type of mouth, has a little baby ghost there in his little pocket, right? Where it creates these unique images, and they're all different NFTs. And so what people are doing is they're purchasing these, and it acts as like a dual process, right? It will show that you have an ownership of one of these NFTs, and that NFT will act as your ticket into this club.
Exactly. And they have different rarities and different values based on these different traits that are unique to the community. Because down the road, the traits may actually play out in the business plan, right? If you have one with ears, you might get access to things that someone with an egg doesn't. And it seems arbitrary and laughable, but it gets kind of fun. And it's really no different than wearing a particular brand of clothing or having a particular hairstyle. It just says something about you, and it lets you don a different personality and get into a different place.
Absolutely.
So one of the ways that you can figure out what an NFT actually does is from their roadmap. This is a cool new way of saying business plan. Okay. So with the spooky boys, they're all about classiness. So, they're talking about golf holes, right? They're talking about mansion parties, they're talking about creating an on-chain game, which is very common, right? So it starts with the sale. Then it starts with the access points in real life and fostering the community and all the different online channels. Then you start getting follow-on NFTs. Then maybe they create a game where you can only play the game if you have your spooky boy. Exactly. So it is a whole world out there that can culminate in a lot of different endpoints. I've seen ones where they culminate in wanting to make a live action movie, right? With the NFTs in them. They want to purchase a secret bunker and you only have access. There's one based out of Las Vegas. They want to make their own restaurant. And with the NFT, if you have an NFT, you get a discount, you get access to unique reservation times. This is going to be, a huge point of interest for a lot of people across the world. So it's really a whole new industry, and it can go in a lot of different directions. And to
I actually have an interesting question real quick. Someone asked, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, but Yasmira Lenars, she asked, how is this different from getting a licensing agreement? We're going to get into that a little bit later down the road. I just wanted to let you know, but the difference right now, just so put it in context of what she's talking about, is that it lives, this smart contract lives on an immutable blockchain, which it creates it like an autonomous thing. You don't need third parties to verify it. And so it shows a proof of concept. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the discussion, but I thought that was an interesting tidbit to add.
Yeah, great point. And just spoiler alert for anybody who is unfamiliar with the term smart contract. Smart contract is really a fancy way of saying a self-executing code, right? It's something that's pre-written by a developer that happens automatically when the terms and conditions are met. Just to give you guys also insight into how people in this community can communicate, and this is true by and large across NFTs. This is Discord. It can be a little jarring to look at. It's a lot of words, but on the left-hand side, you can navigate through topics in the community. You have all these reactions and fun emojis in the community. You get to see the community members. For those of us who grew up with AIM, this is that now. So this is how everyone communicates, either through Discord, or you might be more familiar with Twitter. Communities are often born around Twitter and Discord and a website. So really getting back to the fundamentals of what we're actually talking about here, we talk about what is a hallmark of an NFT project. It's these things, right? It's community. It's having the means to discuss with ultimately your customers, what your goals are, what your business plan is, what your roadmap is, and how you're going to get there. And then finally having a development team, right? Having a group of people who are together, usually in an LLC or some sort of business formation.
Sure. And it'll be good.
Dividing responsibilities.
Yeah, right. So like the roadmap, Jen, that's really important, right? Because if, like what Jen touched on a little bit earlier, is that NFTs have evolved into something much more than just an image. Yes, to the general public, that haven't been immersed in this type of community, in the internet community before, NFTs might just seem like a trading card or a picture that they can just get from somewhere else on the internet. Or if it even lives on the blockchain, they take a screenshot and just download it and send it everywhere. Yes, that can happen. It's a completely real thing. I mean, you're stealing from people, but that's how it goes, right? So what you have now, though, is these NFTs are the foundational technology for building the metaverse, right? And so what people are doing is they are creating these NFTs as a source of capital for an actual ongoing business and an ongoing development with the tech, trying to get to the metaverse, trying to have a larger purpose for their community. Because these NFTs, like we said, they act as a gateway to your entry into like these groups of people to get into this community, because people really like them. They talk about them, they engage with them. Yeah, they act as like trading cards, like Pokemon cards or like Magic Gathering, whatever it is. They all have unique characteristics, they have unique attributes, but they act as a barrier of entry into this community for a lot of things, right? And so what you've got is this roadmap now, which is essentially just a business plan that lays out what they're going to do and how they envision this community to grow, right? And so, Jen, as you pointed out, there's a pre-mint, mint, resale market. There's a lot that goes into this. And so
yeah, Thomas, sorry to interrupt, but why don't you tell them, why don't you break it down a little bit more into the nitty gritty? Okay. So when we talk about pre-mint, when we talk about mint, what are we actually talking about?
Okay, so I'll reference the generative art project that I was talking about, right? So you have a base character and you have like growths, right? So everything in the world costs money, right? As a startup attorney, financing attorney, every question I get, the first question I get is, hey, how do I start a business? Okay, well, you have a choice of entity. You've got LLCs, you've got C Corps, S Corps, sole proprietorships, partnerships, LLPs, whatever you want, right? And so what you do is you pick one that works for you, okay? And then the very next question I get after you disseminate who the partners are, who the shareholders are, what that is. Okay, now we have this idea. How do we get money so that we can do all these awesome things that we want to do and raise this business and get capital? So the answer to that is always either sell stuff or you go raise it, right? And so during the raising phase, it's a hybrid between selling things and raising things. So you're selling NFTs, the idea of this. So you make this business plan, which is the roadmap, and then pre-mint, right? So minting is the actual process of taking an image and putting it on the blockchain and having that individual mint, right? So if you have 10,000 images, one image of those 10,000 images is a mint. That's just what they call it in the game. And they will send that to your personal crypto wallet. So it's usually either on Polygon, Ethereum platform. You've got Solana and Avalanche and all that stuff. But it's basically a layer.
And those are blockchains, right, Thomas? For the sake of the audience, those are all different kinds of blockchains. So when we talk about blockchain technology, that's just the general scope of what we call the technology. But there are different chains and they have different names. Often their cryptocurrency is by the same name. So it can get a little confusing. But when in doubt, if you're talking about things that you typically hear about, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, all these things, you're talking about both a blockchain where they build actual programs on it and they name the cryptocurrency the same.
Yes, that's exactly correct. Thanks, Jen.
And then Thomas, when we talk about pre-mint, one thing I just wanted to point out, and I wanted you to expand on this a bit, but just so everyone knows, this is a marketing scheme first and foremost, right? So pre-mint is about generating the hype for the project and getting people on what's called a whitelist. I know we're throwing a lot of terms around out there, so forgive us, but this is the world we live in now.
It's very complicated. You need the NFT worlds. This is the launching pad.
So Thomas, tell us a little bit about the whitelist and how that pre-mint works, because I think you covered mint pretty clearly.
Sure. So whitelisting is usually how a lot of these people are doing these projects is they'll have these pre-sales, so aka pre-mint, and they'll get on this whitelist, right, where they get special like perks for quote unquote investing early or purchasing in early to these projects where they will get extra benefits, right? So, and this is during the development of the actual product. So think about pre-revenue, right? So if you're an attorney and you do these kinds of things and you're working with startups, this is pre-revenue gain, but you start bringing in money to make these sales. So it's not exactly, because nothing is like one-to-one in the crypto world and the regular tangible world, but it's where you start building up your list, creating hype for the project before the actual NFTs are minted and being made available to secondary markets.
Exactly. In the secondary markets, we gave you some examples here. We've shown you OpenSea. There's some other ones called Looks Rare, Nifty Gateway, Coinbase is building their own. I mean, there are going to be a ton of secondary markets that are similar to eBay and how they work. And they're going to have their own exposure and their own issues to consider, which we'll get into a little bit further into the presentation. But this presentation is also for you, people who want to start exchanges, people who are advising exchanges. Exchanges are going to be around for a while and very much relied upon, particularly by the government, in sort of navigating this space. But more on that later. Let's not jump too far ahead. Sure. Just to reiterate, with the roadmap, with the business plan, okay? Remember, you're working with a metaverse and a universe, right? Yes. Yeah. The metaverse is in virtual. Yeah. So, and then the universe, you know, I hesitate to call it the real world because frankly, the metaverse is going to become part of our real world. I mean, it already is. So I'm going to call it the universe for now, until someone comes up with a better kitsch name. I'm open-minded. But with these roadmaps, you're going to see people with virtual plans, right? They're going to have follow-on collections to the original NFTs. We saw this with a project called Bored Ape Yacht Club. Many of you may have heard of it. It's one of the more famous ones. In that project, they gave the Bored Apes some potion, Thomas, or I forget what they called it. Usually it's called potion. Anyway, they gave them, you could purchase some potion on the blockchain, take it, and suddenly your Bored Ape spawns mutant apes.
Yes. So
this is follow-on.
Yeah. So this is part of the development of their project and getting in different engagement, right? So once the first 10,000 Bored Apes are sold, right? It's like, okay, the founders of the Bored Apes, now what do they do, right? Because they only kept, I think, what was it, 50 or something for themselves and for their development team and marketing. So then what? They just developed the Discord, whatever, and then the maximum their project could get to was just whatever the scale and the prices in Ethereum for the floor price of the Bored Apes were, right? So these people still want to be involved. They still want to have their projects. So what they want to do is develop it further. So what's happening now is you're seeing people talk about this in like seasons too, like basically just like next phase, like phase one, and just like a common one that the term that they use as a season, right? So now, like you said, if you have a potion, you can make it so that you create another NFT that they drink, and then they become these mutant apes, and you have more community engagement. And this goes a lot towards what Jen and I were talking about, is about the communities, because these people love these things. They love interacting with everyone, and they love being able to talk to people and be like, oh, look at the rarity traits of my ape, and you're trading them around. It's essentially like real life Pokemon, except instead of having actual hard cards that like you have to go buy, it's on the internet in Web3, right? And so, and this is why NFTs are important to begin with, is because prior to this, anyone can go take an image of a Charizard and just say, oh yeah, look, I got my Charizard. It's right here. Look at it. Take a picture. Boom. But now you can actually go and verify that that individual owns that Charizard by going onto the blockchain and looking it up and seeing for real, right? And so it just proves as a concept of proof of funds and a certificate of authenticity that you are actually the owner within this community to do so. And there's a lot of other utility that goes with it. I think we're going to get a little bit into that a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of utility, like I said, in virtual. You know, some of them you can only play game. They make games. The mutant apes had their own game, and only if you had a mutant ape could you play. Some of these communities are starting their own currencies. I think they just started ApeCoin last week. You know, you get benefits from getting in early and having access to those coins. Also DAOs, which are sort of their own topic, and I think we'll do another CLE on DAOs. But basically,
Jen, I have another question that's interesting, if you don't mind.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I have a question from Ron Suffren. It says, you're talking about this as a business within a community, but an NFT project also reflects individual pieces of NFT artwork, right? Yes, absolutely. We're not taking away from the artwork at all. We're talking about more in concept, because like, say, for example, Beeple, right? He is a very prominent artist, and his pieces have sold for tens of millions of dollars individually as artwork, right? And so that is a part of the broader NFT space, which is very important. And but those are more one-offs, and those are more artistically driven, right? We're talking more in a little bit more of a concept of like these type of projects that are focused on community, because those are the ones that really drive like business, like companies, rather than artists themselves. So everything we're saying here, the artists or whatever, that is not, we're not trying to detract from that sense. It's just that those artists are still very artists, and that acts specifically, it's like a Mona Lisa, right? And so if you have a Mona Lisa on the blockchain, it acts as a very specific certificate of authenticity, and it shows and it lives on the blockchain forever, and it's beautiful. So Ron, thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I think we're going to definitely get into some of the copyright, trademark type of intellectual property considerations that you might be thinking about if you represent artists or if you're interested in working with an artist. So it's not that we're not going to get to that too, and certainly the entertainment group has a ton. The entertainment law section has a ton of programming on this further down the week, but we just wanted to emphasize to the people attending this that NFTs are not just pictures, they're not just art, they're entire businesses. So I think it's easier to wrap your mind around it being artwork. So that's why we're just kind of moving past that. But yes, we'll cover that. And just one more thing, I think, on the roadmap, which is the non-virtual benefits that you can get. So again, we talked about access to events, locations, giveaways, partial ownerships, really, really important. And someone in the chat, I'm sorry, y'all are such great question askers. Honestly, I don't remember where I saw this question, but someone said, well, if you're trying to start a restaurant, don't you then actually have to go start the restaurant and execute, the actual, the project? And the answer is, you need to show that that's your true intention. You need to try. And so there's certainly a lot of advice and counsel that you need on that, especially if you're promising a restaurant to people. I mean, that's, you want to talk to your land use lawyer, your real estate attorney, a business attorney, get your ducks in a row. But absolutely, these are real projects in the real world that people are trying, or in the universe that people are trying to put together. So definitely great question. These are real things. And then the last really leads us into more of the practical standpoint that Thomas was talking about. The first question you get, how do I start a business? What am I doing? The development team, the entity formation. These are things that everyone, lawyer, non-lawyer, needs to know. I'm sure the lawyers are perking up when they hear entity formation. If you're a savvy NFT project, if you're a savvy NFT project, there are certain things you need to consider to make your internal side work, right? So you start with the basics, your operating agreement. You're a collection of people trying to get this project off the ground. Usually NFT projects have a marketing person and a social media person. They're often different people, but they might be the same. They have, the logistics person, someone who kind of takes more traditional CEO route. They certainly have developers, and they usually work with an artist as well. And these individuals come together, and they typically, form an LLC or some type of structure. Actually, I shouldn't say typically, but from the ones who choose to entertain a formal structure, I've mostly seen LLCs, and they, share in the actual assets of the project. And Thomas is the corporate attorney on the call, so he can give you.
I'll talk a little bit about
nitty-gritty
that.
of
Sorry,
that a little more.
someone was banging on my door and my dog was freaking out, so I apologize.
I know.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, starting an NFT project and you're making sales, you're going to want to have the same setup and the same process as everything else. You're going to want to start some type of organization, set up an entity. Usually these, at least at the beginning, the entities are the people involved. It's usually between 3 to 5, 3 to 7, people involved. You'll have some type of money guy, some type of artist, right? Then you'll have some marketeer, and then you're gonna have a lot of developers, because there's gonna be a lot of developers that have to go into this, because it lives on the internet, right? And so the internet requires a Web3 developer or a Web2 developer. And so all those people are gonna have different interests. They're gonna bring different things to the table. So you're gonna need an operating agreement that, one, lays out everyone's rights, everyone's responsibilities. You're going to have some type of profit sharing that you want to consider, agreement that goes into it. You're going to want to really talk about liquidation events too. If one of the partners wants to get out, and say you end up closing up shop and liquidate everything, that's going to have to be involved, right? And so you're going to want to have some pre-protections put in place, because there's a lot of money going around in this game and in this world. Like, the NFTs are flying around like crazy, and so you're going to be wanting to protect each individual interest, because just like a regular company, just like a regular project that anyone's doing, there can be issues down the road. Founders don't agree. They disagree on a lot of things. People put in more work, people put in less work, and so they're going to want to have those processes put in place, so that there's a governing document just in case there is any dispute in the future moving forward. So there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to want to handle. But as proprietary as blockchain and NFTs are, it still goes back to the basics and the traditional way of setting up a company to really protect yourselves, because you're also going to want to have some type of limited liability of the company, just in case you do something wrong. And one of the people who are buying your NFTs, they see it as security or as an investment, and you misstepped or misled them, you can potentially open yourself up to liability. And so you're going to want to protect your clients. If you're an attorney and you're representing these people, you're going to want to protect them in the traditional way as you would want to a regular traditional startup company.
Yeah, and I think there are some unique factors to consider, given that you're in this particular blockchain space, right? So, for example, if the company is going to have to deal with a crypto wallet, there is what's called a seed phrase, which is a particular phrase that people need to remember to access the crypto wallet. And once someone knows this phrase, they have complete access, and the blockchain's transactions cannot be reversed. So you need to pay special mind to where this seed phrase is kept, because it should not be kept in the virtual world. It should be kept in the universe. I need to come up with a better word. Someone please come up with a better word, but it needs to be kept perhaps in a bank box or somewhere very physical that has very limited and prescribed access. Similarly, when you talk about liquidation events, you're talking about assets that might not be divisible. And if they are divisible, they're not divisible in that you can split it up. You get 30 ETH and I get 50. It is an asset. And so if someone's leaving the company, and there are 1,000 Beeples, do they just get a Beeple? Is that how it works? Do they want a Beeple? What if they're cashing out? What if do they want crypto? Do they want cash? What's the valuation going to be? When are you going to value it? Because these are highly volatile assets. So you really want to think through the specific technological concerns that animate the blockchain space and that can inform your business structure, so that you avoid these kind of crippling partnership disputes down the road. I mean, that's unfortunately where I typically come in. But I know from my corporate people and from Thomas, it's very, very important to talk about dissolution. And there are very unique and specific concerns in this space that you want to make sure you're talking to the right people about, people who truly understand the space and the technology and how it all plays out. Something silly, you know, you don't, as an attorney, you're not always thinking about, well, I need to make sure that every single member has a service of process agent, because what if I can't find the member, right? Normally, you're not dealing with corporations where the members maybe don't know each other's names, or if their names
Might
are
be
usernames.
pseudonyms or just like for example, you can just know them on Twitter and start engaging in these relationships. This is how a lot of these projects starts, is you'll have friends who are in the Twitterverse together, and they're on Telegram and Discord, and they start talking and engaging, and they're all using fake names, and they start working together, because you can start collaborating. With the way technology is, you can work with anyone from anywhere. And that kind of leads us into a little bit of a topic that we'll touch on a little bit later, but is like the fact that this is not universally a United States thing. So as an attorney, you have to really think, this is most of the time cross-border. So you have to start thinking about, if you're advising a project with a partner in the United States and someone else is also in the EU, their laws are significantly different about how you can take in money and how you can sell things, and how the know your client or KYC rules that are actually implemented. These are all things that you really have to think about, because this is a ever expanding space, and it's actually a really awesome, interesting space for lawyers, because it creates things that we've never seen before. Usually, I mean, there's 50 jurisdictions, right? And everyone, like 10 years ago, before the UBE was a thing, you had one bar license, right? And you could only practice in a state. And now you're trying to deal with people with founders who could live. You have 4 founders. One can live in Australia, one can live in America, one can live in Europe, and one can live in Africa. So you now have 4 different jurisdictions that you're trying to coordinate with all these people that you have to be aware of, right? Because each country has its own laws. Each country has its own set of regulations. It's not just the SEC. It's not just the commodities regulator. It's not just the DOJ. It is also other regulating bodies that have a say into this. And so that's what the craziest thing is, that the internet knows no borders, you know? So it's just, it's an ever evolving space. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I totally agree with that. And I think venue selection, I mean, I'm speaking from the litigator's perspective,
Yes.
venue selection, mediation provisions, especially within an international setting, is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're running really low on time, so we're going to speed
Sure.
it up a bit, as
Sure.
often happens with these things. But
I'll bust through
yeah.
the licensing and royalties real quick. So NFTs, right? And we had a question up here. Let me find it. There's a lot of them about the 10% secondary market. Okay, here it is. Matt Reach said, where's the follow-on tracking for the 10% of royalty collection back to the initial issuer? Yes. So how the NFT would work, there's traditionally a 10% royalty fee that's built into second markets, right? So this is put onto a blockchain and it's built into a smart contract. So the NFT itself, especially on the Ethereum protocol, is an actual smart contract. So anytime that is traded after you sell it to someone, the original creator or the artist or whoever it is, the company, the LLC that owned it and made it, gets a 10% royalty fee. Automatically, it's automated. It just directly deposits into that wallet account, right? So instead of having to have a bunch of attorneys go through a bunch of different bank accounts, collect all these different things, have auditors and whatever, it's just like, oh no, hey, I sold you my NFT for 1 ETH. You took it and sold it for 100 ETH. I'm going to get 10 ETH automatically derived right into my wallet that I created. That's why a lot of artists really love these things, is because you have a built-in licensing platform for you, right? And that leads us into some micro licensing, right, Jen?
Yeah.
With and how those work. So one thing that it's gotten really interesting is that you have these real in-life products. So say you buy a pair of Jordans, right? And they're like super crazy sneakerheads, and they're $20,000 Jordans. In the label, you can click your QR code and have that created a NFT in the metaverse through your wallet, right? And you can wear these Jordans in the metaverse, not just in real life in the metaverse, but you can only wear one pair at a time, right? So what's starting to develop are these little micro transactions within the leasing industry that you can say Joe wants to borrow your Jordans. He pays you 1 ETH to wear them in the metaverse for 10 days. That generates a smart contract that'll put the NFT in his closet, right? And he can wear them for 10 days. You get the 1 ETH, and then the self-executing smart contract will automatically, at the end of the 10 days, revert that NFT back into your wallet. And so there's a lot of extra business that's going on, and that could be done, because if you did that in the real life, one, you'd have wear and tear in your Jordans. You have to send them to someone. You have to go collect them. If they keep them, lose them, whatever. It's just not feasible. But the metaverse makes it possible. So you get these cool micro leasing opportunities.
Absolutely. And just, I'm trying to keep an eye on this chat and Q&A. A lot of you are asking really great questions, and I apologize that we don't necessarily have time to go through each, but we can certainly reach out to you. I don't know how we can do that, like through Zoom, but we'll talk with our people at BHBA afterward. If we don't get to you, please do not think we're ignoring you. Please email us. Our contacts are at the end of the slide.
Absolutely.
Happy to talk. So, I think we covered a lot of this stuff already, just the challenges of doing international business across borders. You really want to keep in mind KYC, Thomas, what's that stand for?
Know your client.
Know your client.
Very, very important.
Know your client. And for those of you who are the client, know who you're in business with.
Yes.
That'll help us know you. Okay.
Yes.
Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to guard against getting involved with scary things.
Yes.
Like fraud schemes, like
Yes.
money laundering.
Money laundering is a big thing.
We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but the short version is the DOJ, the SEC, Treasury, a lot of other departments are taking really close looks at cryptocurrency and blockchain technology in general, but specifically with NFTs, because there is so much fraud right now in this space, both within projects and because, we showed you the picture of the spooky boy. It's hard to associate that with like an Islamic terrorist group. You don't really think through that, or like,
exactly.
You don't think about Russia funding a war with, Beeples. You just don't think about it.
You don't think about it that way.
But they could very well be doing that. And so, these government agencies are very concerned with where this money is going. And so you want to be mindful of who you're doing business with. Again, lawyers have lots of PIs if you're really unsure, so we can help you out. But that's the moral of the story with this slide is know who you're in business with, know your client, and really make sure that you're considering a lot of the tools that the government actors have given us to fight against things like money laundering. For example, Treasury released a really helpful guide on some basic things that people can do, like IP tracking to see, and using geolocation tools to make sure that, someone interacting or purchasing or selling your items or someone who's involved in your project even, aren't in the wrong zip codes, frankly, aren't in places where the US government has decided that, they're maybe subject to our sanctions regime, so.
Exactly. For a perfect example, in the EU, if you receive more than $15,000 worth of funds from a single wallet, you're required to report that and track it, right? So because especially in Europe, because they have a lot of refugees and they have a lot of terrorist organizations associated in the Middle East, which is geographically much closer than the United States, right? So they're a little bit stricter about that because they don't want these funds, these cryptocurrencies that sometimes are created out of thin air to help fund terrorist organizations, right? And so they put in strict rules that you have to comply with. So that's another reason why, if you are going to advise on an NFT project, you really need to kind of be aware about these cross-border, these multinational jurisdictional rules, because you could end up running amok and getting your clients in trouble in cross-border situations because you're selling within those jurisdictions and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, and I think especially, DOJ just released a story, an account of how they tracked down these hackers that hacked an exchange of, in that case for cryptocurrency, it's called Bitfinex And they did it by working with exchanges and using and relying on their anti-money laundering protocols and different, tools that are required by the Bank Secrecy Act of certain companies, to help recover those funds, because they were able to ask questions like, where did all this money come from? Where do you live? They were able to freeze wallets because they're actually managed by the exchanges technically and not by the individual. So, I think as DOJ and the different agencies really crack down on this more and rely on companies to really adhere to these anti-money laundering protocols, these sanctions protocols, different things, it's going to be really important to them to enforce them, right? To make sure that you have some basic protocols in place. And, it's really just a primer. If you, speak to the right counsel and, look at the right, they'll have, the right authorities and guidance from the government to help you develop a protocol. And, for all of those people on here who are not attorneys, I don't want you to think we're party poopers. We're not here telling you not to do your crypto project. The reason we are focusing so heavily though on this prevention, and you might think, well, I just want to sell like 1,000 pictures. Why am I hearing about money laundering in Iran? The answer is this, okay? These projects can rapidly spiral out of control. The reason there's so much interest here is because they're highly profitable, right? You could sell 10,000 pieces of a first run of art for, $150 a piece, which is really reasonable in crypto terms.
Plausible what's happening right now. Yeah.
And just on your first run, you can make $1.5 million. And then we're not even talking about the royalties that come from the resale market, which is huge in the beginning. And then if you're generating a second run or a partnership or even more business ventures through your LLC for that, the possibilities are endless, and it's an awesome space, and you should definitely pursue your project. But
be careful.
Once the genie's out of the bottle, or genie's out of the lamp, the lamp. Once the genie's out of the lamp, the genie's out of the lamp, right? So it can become extremely profitable very quickly, and you can lose control of your project very quickly if you don't have the right protocols in place. And unfortunately, because you've made so much money, now you have what? A ton of exposure, right? A ton of exposure, a ton of attention, and a ton of people gunning for you. So it is our job, we feel, to tell you that you should certainly, talk with people who understand how these protocols can work. Put in the investment up front, because it might not seem worth it to go through all this trouble to launch a line of pictures. But if you've learned anything from our talk, it's that if you do things right, it's going to be more than a line of pictures. So you want to be ready and you want to be protected. So there's that's our lecture for the day. So anyway, we just talked a lot about the government actors that are going to be involved in external conflicts. So talked a lot about internal projects conflicts first, like what happens when the founders of these projects get in a fight, what happens when the project breaks up, what happens when you want to evolve the project, you need to think about things like forum selection, etc. But there are also lawsuits out there that are kind of coming around from not just the government, but from Hollywood, from music studios, and then in the background you see the lurk of a class action. Those are my little class action people. So there are lots of different things that you can be aware of and that you need to guard against. For the attorneys on the call in particular, I gave you a lot of cases to look at that kind of touch on a lot of different issues that come up with NFTs. And I don't want to sit here and be an issue spotter. I'm really just here to tell you about the different kinds of cases that are arising and some practical things to take away from that, some practical advice. So, well, not my advice, just some practical advice you might want to give to clients or just considerations that you want to think about, certainly. So gave you a ton of cases in the securities field and intellectual property, consumer protection, torts, and government enforcement. We really covered the government enforcement, so I'm just going to go back to this slide for now. So with the securities cases, this is actually a securities class action. So I'm not even talking about when the SEC comes after you for selling securities. I'm talking about when your, shareholders come after you, even when you don't think they're shareholders, because you didn't offer the right disclosures. In this case, this was about that NBA Top Shot NFT, where the company created moments from NBA games and they sold them in the form of NFTs. They minted them in partnership with the NBA and others, and they sold them to consumers, and consumers came back and said, well, great, you sold them to us, now we want to sell them again, and we want to cash out. And the company said, you can't cash out for a year. We're trying to launch a crypto exchange, or I'm sorry, a cryptocurrency. We're trying to, grow our blockchain. And so they wouldn't, so there was a freeze, and consumers understandably freaked out and brought a securities lawsuit and said, this is an unregistered security. And what happens then when it's unregistered and you keep going? You don't give consumers the proper disclosures. Thomas, you want to tell them all about the blue sky laws the blue sky disclosures you recently drafted?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to have your disclosures in there. If you're going to be doing, especially if you're going to be doing a project that has follow on, and I'm actually answering someone right now on this question. It's from Andrew Taylor. It's like, how prevalent is the connected community? Aren't most NFT collections just standalone art? And so, yes, there are a lot of collections that are standalone art, but the cat's out of the bag on that, right? Like, everyone's like, oh, I want to get on this NFT thing. And so everyone wants in. And so, yes, there will always be some standalone art. If it's really cool and really awesome, yeah, they're going to be selling and people are going to be buying them. But people who are business oriented, it is now a large trend moving forward, has become more about the community and the utility behind the actual NFT than the actual art itself, right? Because think about it prior. I mean, artists, how much money do you pay for just to put an art on your wall? Maybe like this thing behind me, that was $65, right? Like, people in the NFT world are paying $150 for something similar, but it's associated with a community. It's associated with a long-term standing project, right? So these types of projects are probably going to be considered securities down the road, because you are initially issuing an image, right? Say 10,000 generative art project, you're issuing those to get funds to fund things down the road. For example, if you have an NFT project that starts out and you have 10,000 NFTs, later, these people are using portions of those funds that they raise to make video games out of them, trading cards out of them, where your NFT that has all these different traits that we were talking about earlier, they associate them with powers, right? And so you can have your NFT that has certain powers, and then you go and have a battle, a card game battle that's like on a mobile app that they are having, that you play against someone within the community that has their own NFT, and you're battling each other, kind of like Pokemon or kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh, something like that, all these different games. And so you're going to need to have these disclosures moving forward. And we can go into detail on that if you like, but you're just going to want to have the blue sky security laws. You're going to have the SEC acts, all the different things that you need to have in there is going to be prevalent. You're going to have important disclosures on your website, the privacy policy, and how all this goes. And so all those things that you usually have for a regular business when you're selling stuff, you're going to want as well for NFTs, almost even more so because of the fact that you're not necessarily even just selling products anymore. Sometimes you might accidentally be selling a security.
And I think, like, to give you some framework, and this is from Howie, which is the informative case on this issue for the SEC right now.
Mm-hmm.
You want to think about, do you have a common enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
the community.
Yep.
Do you have a reasonable expectation of profits through participation in distributions from the enterprise? The handout of NFTs, of subsequent NFTs.
Your NFTs appreciating in value and then selling them.
Do you expect the people running the project to actually generate the value? Exactly, Thomas. Like, are you relying on the team that does it or the sole proprietor that does it? Speaking of, someone asked if a sole proprietor has exposure as well. Answer is yes. And talk to an attorney about the right forum for you. I mean, I'm sorry, the right entity for you. formation, I was thinking, because, you really might not want to be a sole proprietorship, or if you are, might need to take certain steps because you're just kind of like the lone ranger out there, and you don't have much protection in terms of personal assets.
Yes.
So, you should definitely talk about that with counsel. But the point is, the reason we're saying these are, seen more and more as securities is because they're group projects that are essentially gaining value through the efforts of the project leaders, which are great things, but they can also be securities. So, we could definitely get into that. I know another group during this whole week is covering securities in depth, so we'll leave that to them. Did want to touch on the intellectual property cases we've been seeing. Quentin Tarantino, you may have seen, is offering his own line of NFTs from Pulp Fiction. It's basically he's taking his handwritten screenplay that he wrote, taking excerpts of it and providing oral commentary that's attached to the screenplay, and then selling it to people as NFTs, and then they get other benefits as well. And Miramax is like, that's cute, but we have a contract and we own all your copyrights. Yeah. And Tarantino says, well, no, those are my holdback copyrights. Those are the copyrights that I retain alone. I think he said reserved copyrights or reserved rights, or what he calls it. Commentary. And I have a whole talk prepared on all these cases. So if you want to talk to me about them, call me. But basically, it is a very, in that case, it's a closed case. It's a straight up, contract analysis. Did Tarantino reserve those rights for himself, or is he infringing on Miramax's copyright? Hermes is also bringing a case against this marketing guy who started a line of Meta Birkins. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Birkin bags are manufactured by Hermes. They're really fancy bags. They can be millions of dollars, right? They usually start around $20,000-$30,000, somewhere in there. So, it's their art. Their art in their own right in the universe, right? But in the metaverse, Mason Rothschild, which isn't his real name, I guess, but whatever, good marketing guy, has his own name. He made Meta Birkins, and so one of Hermes's big points against him for trademark infringement, copyright infringement, all these claims. One of the points they made was that while he did add a disclaimer to his website saying he wasn't affiliated with Hermes after he received their cease and desist, he didn't put that disclaimer anywhere else, right? He didn't put it in his Discord. He didn't put it on anywhere, like in any exchange that he worked with, his Twitter. So something to consider too with the intellectual property piece is not just to make deals with people and make sure that you really think through if you're relying on someone else's art or someone else's reputation, in the case of Little Yachty's case, to sell your NFTs, you got to think about making the deals and giving the disclosures if you can't make a deal, right? Thinking through derivatives and thinking through when copying is acceptable and when it's not. And a lawyer can tell you that, for all you non-lawyers out there. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but again, I cannot encourage you guys enough to please contact us. We are available with whatever you need. You had some really smart questions out there. And we're just out of time. Yeah. We could talk about this forever. I mean, I'm seriously looking at like a 20-page chat and 12 questions and 170 people in here. So, so please do reach out. Our contact information is at the bottom, and we'll try our best to get back to you. And like I said, we're the co-chairs of the business law section of the Beverly Hills Bar. So you can reach us anytime if you want to see more content like this for attorneys or for non-attorneys, whoever. I know we have a lot of Beverly Hills Chamber people here and people who subscribe to Variety. So even if you're not a lawyer and you just want to hear more about this and maybe focus in on one or two topics, that really interest you, shoot us an email. We're happy to talk. In case you didn't notice, we like to talk. Yes, we do. That's and I would 100% reiterate Jen's commentary there. We really appreciate you all for being here. I can speak for Jen too. We love this stuff. We very much think it's the future, but at the same time, you have to approach it practically. A lot of people in the crypto space, they say lawyers like, oh, no, Sean, but it's just, it's a reality of the world we live in, right? And so there's going to be regulation, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because, one, it'll get the bad actors out of the industry so that the good
actors and the people who are really trying to drive this industry forward can have a regulatory framework in which they can rely upon and know exactly how to proceed so that they don't have to get in trouble down the road, and they know exactly what to do. And so I think that in the future, the SEC, the Treasury, the DOJ, whoever is going to be the regulatory body ultimately is going to set up some type of regulatory framework that works within the NFT world, that actually works within the crypto world, and even the IRS, because right now that system's broken as well, and that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. But talk to us whenever. I love it. Jen's the best. Thank you, BHBA, for having us. This was so amazing, and like Jen said, our contact information is at the bottom of the slides. If you don't have them, just reach out to whoever your contact was for getting this, and we'll be happy to disperse any of that information for you.
All right, cool beans. Well, thanks everyone again, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.
Thank you. Good talking, everyone.